What is going on, everybody? I am back today to talk about a horror movie that was released just recently in theaters that I was actually really excited to watch. I did quite a while back a ranked list video where I ranked every single movie in the Final Destination series. I had never watched them before. I think I watched the first one a really long time ago. And so I watched the entire series to do that rank list video. And what I found out after I watched that series was I absolutely love the Final Destination movies. I think they are completely and totally stupid. They're over the top and ridiculous. But what makes them fun is the absurdity of it and the great practical effects. And it's just really dark, demented, twisted humor, which is right up my alley. The only movie in the entire franchise that I think is awful is the fourth installment, and I could barely make my way through it because the performances were so terrible and a lot of the kills weren't all that great. But aside from the fourth movie, I really enjoy every single film in that installment. And it's been quite a bit of time since the fifth movie was released. But with these types of movies, I don't really worry all that much that they can screw it up because it's such like an absurd premise anyway. As long as you stick to what makes it fun, which is really great practical effects and the absurdity of the kills, that's what makes it super entertaining. And so today I'm going to tell you about Final Destination Bloodlines. Final Destination Bloodlines is directed by Zach Lipovsky and Adam B. Stein. Plagued by violent recurring nightmare, college student Stephanie heads home to track down the one person who might be able to break the cycle and save her family from the grisly demise that inevitably awaits them all. So, I was super excited to watch this movie. I read a ton of reviews beforehand, and it seems like the kind of opinion of this movie is all over the place. There were either people saying this is the best of the franchise, some people just saying that it was really good, and some people saying they didn't enjoy it whatsoever. And what I will say is this movie definitely incorporates everything that makes a fun Final Destination movie. There's some really absurd kills. The characters are incredibly over the top and silly. There's an interesting enough plot line to keep you invested in the movie. But I will say, outside of 4, which is completely unwatchable trash, this is probably my second least favorite in the entire series. I enjoy what they were going for, but I found a lot of the kill effects to not be great in this movie. It feels like they relied a lot heavier on CGI and they just didn't look fantastic. And I feel like they gave a lot away in the trailer so that it was a little bit less effective than it probably could have been if I would have went in completely and totally blind. And I'll talk about that a little bit more as I break the movie down for you. So at the beginning of the movie, we are introduced to Stephanie and we learn a little bit about her relationship with her family. Her mother left her and her brother when they were very young, so she's not a part of their lives. She's going to college, trying to do something with her life, and she's having these very intense, reoccurring nightmares about this horrible tragedy that happened in this restaurant that's up in this big skyscraper that was built. If you've watched the trailer, the restaurant, falls down and everyone in the restaurant dies. And one of her family members was in the restaurant, and that is her grandmother. And so she wants to go visit her cousins and her family to kind of learn more about this woman that she really knows absolutely nothing about. And when she goes there and kind of prods the family about it, they don't want to talk about it at all. They're like, oh, she's out of her mind. She's nuts. She chose to live in complete and total seclusion from everyone else. She doesn't want to be around us. You don't want anything to do with her. And so, against the wishes of her family, she decides to go visit her grandmother anyway. And when she gets there, her grandmother tells us what we already know about the Final Destination movies, which is that in this particular case, she was at that restaurant. She learned that that tragedy was going to happen, and she saved a bunch of people's lives. But death doesn't want you to save those lives. Death has picked that time and place for people to die. And because those people were saved, death is eventually going to come back and get each and every one of them. And she's talking about how people that survived that tragedy are dying one by one, and eventually it's going to come for her family. And so once Stephanie learns about this, she has to try to find a way to keep her family alive. And that's the entirety of the film, is once Stephanie learns this information, she goes back home and tries to keep her entire family alive. So like I said, this movie is definitely fun, but I don't think that it's anywhere near as good as the other films in the franchise outside of 4, which, like I said, is a complete and total mess. The things I will say that I appreciate about this movie, I really enjoyed the absurdity of a lot of the people in the cast. Like, they're really overplaying it, especially like the guy who works at the tattoo parlor. And that's one of the things that I've always appreciated about the Final Destination franchise, is similar to a lot of great slasher movies from the 80s. If a character isn't super interesting or doesn't have a very detailed background, what you do to make them entertaining is make them an overblown caricature. Give them a personality trait that they just play into 110%, and that keeps the movie entertaining and engaging to watch. And that's what I really liked about this. There are a lot of characters like that that kind of lean really heavily into one particular aspect of who they are, which is what makes the movie entertaining. I had a lot of fun with the performances from these actors and just how absurd that it is. Secondly, I like a lot of the ridiculousness of the kills. I did say, that this film felt like the kills relied a little heavier on CGI, and there were some of the closeout moments with the kills that I didn't find as satisfying as some of the previous installments, but I did think there's some really ridiculously over the top and creative moments in this that were just a blast to watch. And I really like the movie does a lot of foreshadowing, which typically these do, where a character's put in a situation and you kind of get an idea as to how they're going to die before the situation actually happens. And I like that the directors are clever with their dark sense of humor. It's another thing that makes this series a lot of fun. And I did enjoy the idea of this with the family and kind of like scooting away from death and how death would creep back. I thought the writing for that, similar to a lot of the previous installments in the series, it was really entertaining to watch, and that was something that I appreciated. And I definitely laughed quite a bit in this movie, and that's what I enjoy so much about them. My issue with this movie is I do feel like anytime the film cut back to a lot of the family drama, I just didn't care all that much. There's a lot of repetitive scenes of dialogue in this that feel like it pads. Like, this thing got pretty close to 2 hours long, and I don't think it needed to be. Like, you can really condense these movies down. It's the 6th installment. I don't feel like it needed as much exposition as they relied on in this. There were definitely some moments I felt like could be trimmed down and cut out to make it a little bit more effective. And like I said, some of the CGI in this just wasn't all that satisfying. Like, it's trying to showcase this really grisly, awful stuff, and some of it just felt a little cartoony, which made the effectiveness of a lot of the kills not necessarily as impactful as previous installments in the franchise, which was a little bit disappointing. Like I said, there's some highly, highly creative kills that are developed for this movie, but like a lot of them center around a penny, which I thought, like, Death kind of having this sense of humor and utilizing the penny, like, you could take that as fun. I thought it was kind of lame in comparison to a lot of the other films. Like, they tried to add it as like a charm kind of wink in the nod at the audience, which is fine if that's something that you're into, but I wasn't all that into it, which I think is another reason why it falls a little bit further down on the list for me. And I didn't care about all of the characters. Like, there's some of the characters in this movie that I just found a little bit more grating than others, and they don't necessarily need to be super likable, but there were ones that I found to be a lot more fun. I didn't think that the lead actress, like, she didn't give a bad performance by any means. I think she did a fine job, but I wasn't nearly as interested in her and her brother and their dynamic as I was a lot of the people in the previous installments. And I just think that it was the approach to this story. They tried to incorporate way too much, too many moving parts, and clearly you want there to be a number of victims in the movie so that you can draw out these really incredibly choreographed scenes. But that was another thing that kind of hindered it for me. But I still think it's a fun installment in the Final Destination series. I think if you enjoy these movies, you'll find something to like with this, and I definitely think it's worth checking out if you do enjoy them. So have you seen Final Destination Bloodlines? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I thought this movie was incredibly entertaining despite the numerous amount of flaws that it has. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.